there is a common denominator here. So welcome to our first panel. My name is Laurie Thorpe. I'm from IBM. I have been involved in quantum only very recently. My background is in telecommunications. And as we start to look at the quantum era, as we start to look at these fascinating capabilities that are evolving, we're looking more at how they can be applied across different industries. And this is where I came to quantum, but also to quantum safe. So I'm really pleased today to welcome some fantastic panelists that are going to talk to us about how the quantum era is going to impact different industries, how it impacts the security of different industries, and and we will we'll make a start on the questions. So I'm going to start with. Can I ask you very briefly to introduce yourselves and to tell us about your journey into quantum technologies? Starting with Lena.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Lena Odersen. I am Senior Vice President at the Novo Nordisk Foundation. So my journey into quantum started actually when I studied physics. So I've studied physics and then I went up in the academic system until I reached the level of a full professor at the Niels Bohr Institute in Physics. You can't hear me? This one. Okay, is this better? Okay, good. So anyway, my background is as a professor of physics, and that's why I have entered into quantum. But now I work for Novo Nordisk Foundation. And so in the Novo Nordisk Foundation has an engaged ownership of the Novo Nordisk companies. So these include, for instance, Novo Nordisk AS, the pharmaceutical company, Novozymes, and 160 other companies. So this private enterprise foundation is a Scandinavian construct. It's a way to ensure that companies maintain, say, their headquarters in Denmark and maintain expertise, knowledge, etc. within Denmark, that they're not sold out of the country. So the Novo Nordisk Foundation today is the third largest private foundation measured in terms of grant awarding. It is actually the largest private foundation measured in assets. So coming back to quantum, within the last 3 years, we've had a strategic focus on quantum. Our main mission is to develop quantum technologies with the purpose of using these to solve real problems in the life sciences. So, you want me to use this? Is this better? Yeah, sorry. I just want to repeat the last part, is that in the Novo Nordisk Foundation, we've, within the last 3 years, had a strategic focus on developing quantum technologies with the purpose of using these to solve real problems in the life sciences. We've had a number of different initiatives, which I'll be really happy to detail later. Also speaking about the ecosystem, which is something we work really hard to improve. Just last Friday, we had the inauguration of the NATO Alliance Quantum Accelerator, which is located in Copenhagen under the roof of what we call Bio-Innovation Institute, which is also owned by the Novo Nordisk Foundation. And this will accelerate innovation within quantum. Just one little teaser. We just had an opening for an open competition to get a spot at the accelerator, and there were 1,400 applications from the order of 10 spots. So much potential out there.
All right. I'm not sure which one to use. Is this one working?
Use the mic.
All right. I'll just use this one. This is going to turn into a skit. How many physicists and engineers does it take to get the sound right? So I'm Nadia Carlston. I'm VP of Product at Sandbox EQ. And I guess to start with the last question, what has brought me into quantum? On paper, it looks like I have the perfect academic background to be in quantum. My undergraduate is in physics, my PhD is in engineering. But the reality is that when I graduated with my PhD, I had no idea what quantum was. I was building microelectrical and mechanical systems, chips. I was in the clean room most of the day. And I decided to go into business and do product development. And that was basically my career for many, many years before I actually got back into quantum. So at Sandbox, what we do is quantum and AI. We're actually bringing both technologies together for several applications. We have products around quantum sensing. We also have products around simulation of quantum systems using classical computers. And we also do security. So we look at the security aspect of quantum computing and how organizations can help themselves against this threat of quantum computers. I came to Sandbox from Amazon, where I was leading product for quantum. Actually, Bracket, which was used for the short film that you saw for the music, was one of my first projects. I was the product manager for Amazon Bracket. And when I was developing that product, I had no idea that it would one day be used as a soundtrack for a film. So that was really exciting for me to see. But the reason I mention that is because I first got into quantum from the side of quantum computing, and then kind of expanded my area of expertise from computing to now quantum sensing in all of these different areas. So one of the really important piece for me to talk about in this panel and more generally is that quantum is a lot broader than just quantum computing. And hopefully this is going to be a recurring theme on this panel, but also during this conference.
Thank you. Ooh, works first time. So my name is Luke Ibbotson. I have the pleasure of leading Vodafone Group's Research and Development Department. I think Vodafone ought to be familiar to most people in the room, looking around at the faces. We operate telecommunication networks in more than 20 countries worldwide. In addition to quantum, I'm going to mention a few of the other research clusters I look after, because you'll see that the applications of quantum actually has some synergy with, I think, possibly most, if not all of them. So I look after our research into 6G, which we're determined is going to be quantum safe from the outset. I look after our research in advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning, so we'll talk about that, I'm sure, at length a little bit later. I also look after the work we're doing around something we call connected mobility, which is looking at how we can use some of the existing and new network technologies to help build safer roads and safer cars by helping vehicle manufacturers progress towards higher levels of vehicle autonomy. We also do non-terrestrial telecommunication networks, so everything that isn't bolted to the ground but floating in space at various altitudes. That's another one of our key interest areas. So really everything from rockets to qubits to self-drive cars. So I've got a very, very cool job. Not quite as cold as the giant fridges that IBM make to create quantum magic, but pretty cool nonetheless. So my journey to quantum started, certainly from the company perspective, we started looking at the technology around 3 or 4 years ago and reached two very early but very, very important conclusions. Firstly, that the technology was maturing rapidly enough for us to be needing to take very material steps towards protecting ourselves against the threat posed by quantum. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on, especially in the context of the task force that Karina already very nicely gave us a little plug for earlier. But we also came away from that early work convinced that there are going to be some very, very valuable, worthwhile applications within the telecommunications space that we'll be able to use quantum computers for. So we're looking very broadly into two categories there, one around optimization, things like placement of our antennas, but we're also looking at quantum machine learning because, I guess it's no surprise, we use today's AI and machine learning to the fullest extent possible across multiple domains within Vodafone. Understanding how we can go further by applying quantum technology is something that we've been investing quite a bit of time in, and I can say a little bit more about that if time allows in a moment. So that's me, and very, very pleased to join this panel and participate today.
Hi everybody, so I'm Georgios Korpas, and my journey has been pretty standard. I just studied physics all the way to PhD level, and then I was very desperate because it was so hard to get a really good postdoc. So I decided, well, I can do what everybody else does, which is AI and machine learning. Only my way to physics to re-emerge later on within quantum computing. I currently work at HSBC, so a bank, and I am also a lecturer at the Czech Technical University in Prague, where I teach a course in quantum computing. And within HSBC, I'm not sure how much you might know, there's a lot of operations, there's a lot of use cases where quantum computing might offer some advantage. And definitely one of our main focuses is to understand what are these use cases and what are the best way to approach them. And in the end of the day, even if the potential new solution is not quantum, that's still great. That's a contribution of quantum. And within this space, we have a lot of interest from optimization, the classics, machine learning, communications. Security is a big one, of course. But understanding the potential impact of this technology, my job is not only look at this field, which is, what are the use cases, what are the algorithms. HSBC has realized that innovation also lies within the keyboard of quantum computers. That is, how do you import data into quantum computers, as well as the monitor? How do you read out data out of quantum computers? And as such, I'm heavily involved in IP creation and the technology itself, which is something that I think is very innovative from a bank.
Thank you. So, so we know that there's a lot going on in terms of the maturity of the technology. We're seeing papers being published. We're seeing progress being made. I can speak for the IBM roadmap, where there's a lot of work ongoing around scaling the number of qubits, but also making these capabilities more accessible. From your perspective and in your industries, what do you see as the main impacts, and what would you like to see happening in order for that quantum computing capability to become useful, to become applicable?
Thank you. Yeah, I can start. So before we can see real advantages of quantum computing, there are a number of challenges that we would need to overcome. And so we actually commissioned a report from around Europe that has its headquarters here in London to help us identify those challenges. And so some of the challenges are that we need better hardware. We need better control of the individual electron or whatever, or qubit is based on, photon, whatever. So we definitely need better machines before we can have a real advantage. Also, of course, we would need the entire stack. Also, we need, and this is very difficult, we need an interdisciplinary collaboration. And now this is really hard because there's a distinction between the tech experts, say the quantum nerds, typically the physicists, the engineers, and then those who have the really exciting use cases. And they usually don't speak the same language. So in the foundation, we've tried to initiate projects where we more or less enforce these different types of people to collaborate. And it's really hard because the physicists would say, oh, why should we have these people from the life sciences on board? They are slowing us down. And likewise, those from life sciences would say, oh, we don't need this technology. We don't see the purpose of it today. We will just sit down for 3-4 years, wait and see where it goes. But then, if they do that, the problem is the train has taken off. Sorry to say, Europe is not in the lead anymore. Somebody else is in the lead. We just cannot. We cannot wait for that. So for that reason, actually, we are strongly pushing for the interdisciplinary collaboration, also for training of an interdisciplinary workforce, potentially vocational interdisciplinary training of people who are already experts in a certain area. But also, of course, the geopolitical aspects are entirely different in this space. But maybe we'll come back to that later. Yeah.
So I agree with everything that Lena just said. For me, the way that I'm seeing this race kind of play out is a little bit different because in my role at Sandbox, we don't actually build quantum computers anymore. Well, we don't build quantum computers, so I don't have to worry about it as much anymore. But our customers do. And what they are hearing is kind of constant announcements of more qubits and the quantum computers are almost here. And what they want to know is, what does it mean for me? And there's kind of two camps. There's the customers that are very excited about this technology and what they can do with it. But there's also the camp that meets those claims with fear. Are these quantum computers already here? Are they here today? What does it mean for encryption, for example? It's well known that quantum computers will impact the current standards of encryption. And there's processes in place to identify what these next standards are. There's one in the US. There's also ongoing efforts in Europe. And so when people are talking about more and more qubits, even though they're talking about it, maybe because they're talking about it at a very high level way, and it's not really clear. They never mention the quality of those qubits, by the way. Very rarely do I see specs about the quality of the qubits when somebody announces they have more. And so the impact on that is not clear. And when we talk about the impact on security, that really becomes problematic because if board members and security folks that have to worry about the impact on encryption don't know what that means, then they can have a mindset of, I don't need to worry about it right now, which is absolutely not the right thing to do. And so what I try to tell customers is, yes, you don't have to worry about it today. You don't really have to lose sleep that quantum computers have already infiltrated your network somehow. But at the same time, you do have to get ready for this world of quantum today. And so it has to be a very balanced conversation, and it really can't just be about the number of qubits. It has to be, as Lena said, focused on the applications. In my case, the application is security, so it has to be about the impact on encryption. It has to be about moving to these new standards of encryption, as opposed to trying to guess whether quantum computers will happen and in what time frame it will happen. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether they come tomorrow or they come in 10 years. All of the tools are actually there for organizations and for boards to already start preparing from a security aspect for this quantum threat.
That's a perfect segue to what I was about to say, actually. So we're looking at, obviously I represent a telecommunications operator, so we're very much looking at the impacts of quantum technologies on us as a sector. Huge, strong resonance with what has been said around the need to start to prepare early for the advent of quantum computing. We know that we operate very, very complex business, IT, and technology domains. We have multiple generations of technology. Even with the Vodafone, we have thousands of suppliers. And we have cryptography buried in almost every dark corner of our systems and our processes and our organization. I don't think we're alone in not understanding exactly where we have potentially vulnerable cryptography. So one of the things that we're starting to advocate, and one of the first implications for us as a sector, is to have a very, very good, rigorous process for building a cryptographic bill of materials, by which I mean compiling that inventory of where cryptography is used. Now, I'll come back to what Karina mentioned at the start, and both IBM and Vodafone formed a task force almost exactly a year ago with the aim of coalescing the telecommunications ecosystem, which comprises, of course, not just the network operators, but also the technology suppliers, our customers, our stakeholders, into addressing the need to prepare for the quantum era. So we published a first set of impact guidance about, well, when was it, 6 months ago in Barcelona? In February.
Yeah.
We followed it up just last week with some quantum risk assessments guidelines, which is to start double-clicking on the next level down to make it a little bit more pragmatic for companies needing to prepare for the path towards quantum. So that, I think, is something that we're placing a lot of focus on. As I said at the beginning, and not to labor a Star Wars analogy, quantum is a force with a dark side and a good piece. So we are very much looking forward to positive applications of quantum as well, and we're working quite intensively, again, with partners like IBM and Sandbox to understand the upside of quantum. And we've done some very good work already to see how we could introduce quantum-safe capabilities to products that we sell to enterprise customers and public sector and government clients today. So there's some very near-term opportunities that we're seeing. We're also working with people like IBM to understand how we might apply quantum technologies to common business problems such as fraud detection by using the improved pattern recognition and data clustering techniques that we believe is inherent within quantum computing that lets us, for example, address unbalanced data sets in trying to assess where fraud is happening. So we're looking at this on multiple fronts, but I think those are the two main implications for us as a sector.
Maybe just very briefly to highlight that this is the task force is specifically looking at the telco industry. And we started with the telco industry because sort of this was the area that we were both working in. But I think there is a case to be looking at the different industries. And given we're on a panel that is looking at use cases across different industries, that might also be a consideration that what we're seeing is that there are some very specific requirements that have come out that are, in our case, specific to telco. And I expect, and Giorgio, you might be able to comment on that, it's probably likely that that will also be the case for banks and for financial services, where, going beyond the high level, we need to do the inventory and we need to do the discovery and the how do you do that practically, and what does that mean for each of the industries? Who are the partners that you need to work with?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's not easy to identify these partners. And actually, it's a good pass, because I would like to tie to what the original question was, which was related a little bit towards what are the roadblocks, right? And I would like to say that, to me, the roadblocks are the fact that maybe there is not enough focus on the actual problems we have in order to materialize quantum technologies. And very often we'll go, for example, there's this magic new quantum algorithm or something, right? I can solve this problem that much faster. Which most often is that's not the case. Use case by use case differs so vastly. It's very difficult to go through the process of one vendor or one solution or one algorithm or whatnot. Being able to identify what a business needs, especially this type.
We have diversity. Not quite a qubit.
Yeah. So being able to identify, like the use case, like in its raw technicalities, which we're not supposed to talk about here today, is a non-trivial task that requires specialized people, and takes time, takes effort, it's painful. And my answer, I guess, is like a lot of uncertainty. Surprise, surprise. On I cannot even recommend what are the best practices on how to approach this. I think we're all in a stage of exploration.
So I'd say that resonates from my side as well. And one of our early observations was that we need to be upskilling our organization across the board to understand, not to train everybody to become a quantum physicist, but to understand a little bit what the art of the possible is, so that as we're looking at business problems that people might consider impossible or intractable, actually saying, you know what, I think that might be a good use case for a future quantum application. So I think creating the skill within the organization to spot where the opportunities lie, recognizing that we have challenges around the scale and the error, the extent to which current devices are prone to error, and also the fact that the bar is continuously changing in terms of what one is comparing it to with high-performance computing and tensor networks and other technologies that you might be able to apply. So I think those are that presents the challenge, but it's also a very exciting field to be in, I would say.
So I would like to pick up on the use case, and I'd like to take the perspective of pharma. So it is beyond doubt that quantum technologies are going to accelerate the pharma industry, for instance, accelerate drug discovery. And so, therefore, it's actually important already today to keep very close to the goal of developing quantum technologies for this specific purpose. It's a bit like the Apollo mission. You knew you were going to land a person on the moon and get him back alive, but you didn't know how to build the rocket, right? But you had to really zoom in on the moon. This is where we're going. You need to know as much as you possibly can about that journey, and then build the technology. And I think it's the same for the use case in pharma, for instance, probably also in many other areas, but I'm most knowledgeable about pharma, that what we need to use these technologies for in pharma will influence the choices we make, say, of course, on the algorithms, the electronics, but even all the way down to the hardware and the choice of qubits that we make. I mean, what is the most important parameter? Would it be clock speed? Would it be decoherence length? What is it? And so, therefore, that's not just arbitrary. We need to know the goal before we make the choices. And that's why the technologies cannot develop by their own. It will be so much more useful if the applications are a part of pulling the development of the technologies.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that, what I'm hearing is that the key to ensuring that the potential of these amazing technologies that we're developing, it's around collaboration, and it's around ensuring that the users of the technology have an understanding of the technology, and the people developing the technology have an understanding of what the uses are going to be. And I think equally, if we apply that same principle to quantum safe, we need to understand what is the threat that is being created, and how do we go about fixing that in the various environments. So I think here the key word is ultimately it's around cooperation and collaboration, and ultimately I guess a little bit of cross-pollination in terms of knowledge and skills as well. So we've got not very much time left. I guess one last question for all of you. What is it that you would recommend that the audience do, or that the audience think about when we think about the application of quantum, or we think about security in the quantum era in your particular field of expertise?
So first of all, the quantum area has the challenge that we do not yet have a very convincing use case. And therefore, also it's technologies which are kind of difficult to assess and to see the exact use of. Therefore, I believe it's difficult to be an investor in this space. But what I would really hope for is that those of you here who are investors, that you will be brave and you will hire people who are knowledgeable about this field and will start investing, because we so much need the investment beyond the Series A, for instance, in this space. Another thing which I would hope for is that we become, say, in Europe and in UK, less naive than we have been previously. If we, for instance, compare to the semiconductor industry, where we basically lost out to Asia. So we need to take a different approach. We need to learn from our mistakes in the past. And maybe we need to be, in some ways, slightly more protective towards some of these new emerging technologies and their applications.
Thank you. So, I mean, for me, it's two pieces of advice / requests from this audience. The first one is, when you hear quantum, just remember that it's not one technology. It's actually an umbrella term for many technologies. We tend to talk about quantum computing as if that is the only quantum technology, but there's some really interesting things happening in quantum networking, quantum sensing, the security aspect, as we've mentioned, and they all have unique challenges. They share the fundamentals, which is good, but they have unique challenges, and they're on different, different status of maturity, I guess. And that brings me to the second point. Don't think about quantum as a technology of the future. Many aspects of quantum are actually here. Quantum computers are still nascent. They're not going to be ready to do, very practical things tomorrow. But there's other technologies like quantum sensing that are actually already making an impact. And quantum sensing for navigation, for example, we heard about the great test that Boeing just did with quantum sensors. That's an example of something quantum that is already being used for a very important application. So just, think about it as something that already exists as opposed to something that's going to come in 10 years and therefore there's plenty of time to learn about it.
I think that point on timing is critical, whether you're talking about the migration to quantum safe, where we're already seeing that whilst we've started to see some quantum resistant algorithms being out for standardization but haven't been selected by NIST, it will be a multi-year process to understand how to get those baked into products that we acquire. So we're seeing real threats at the moment from store now, decrypt later, and things that don't require quantum computers to be available at scale today, but just requires you to have a belief that they will be available at some point in the future. The other part on timing is that when we look at the applications, we are consciously trying to dovetail the most exciting or impactful applications of quantum with how we see the developing state of the art in terms of the way that you make the qubits, the way that you are able to program the devices, the degree of fault tolerance, and how they can be scaled up. So, for example, we're prioritizing quantum machine learning at this stage over optimization because we think optimization is likely to be a challenge that is more amenable to later generations of quantum device. So I think as people start to think about the journey they're on, I would advocate not looking at quantum as one thing, but as a continuum of capabilities, and be very, very mindful of where you think you're going to be able to get the right outcome. But above all, prepare yourselves. Go and read the impact assessment paper that we published in GSMA. It's good reading, and at least you can start to follow that playbook, whether you're in telecommunications, to Laura's point, or in an adjacent industry. I think everybody is going to have a very similar journey to follow, albeit with their own specific twists and turns.
I think the question was about how the audience can get involved. Am I correct? Yeah, so
what would you like to ask of the audience?
What I would like to ask?
Yeah, what would you like them to do?
Right, so if you're interested in quantum technologies, in my opinion, there's nothing mystical about them. Despite what people say about not being able to understand quantum mechanics, we understand quantum mechanics pretty well if you bear in mind what we're actually trying to achieve, right? So we must have some quite decent understanding, and this understanding can be accessible to everybody at all levels, for all backgrounds. Of course, not everybody will become, a lab technician, or not everybody will work on developing algorithms. But there's place for everybody, and it's a huge chance because it happens that we're right here very early on. So I would definitely advise you, if you're interested, to not be afraid, and with the correct resources and events like this one, I think you can make a big step and benefit yourselves personally, your organizations, the people around you, and hopefully this is the means that as a community we can proceed to solve some of the problems that we're discussing here today. Yeah.
So we're coming to the end of the panel. Are there questions? Sure.
So I think it was my comment, actually. So in my opinion, what's wrong with the hardware we have is that we are not in control of the individual atom, the individual photon, the individual electron. So therefore, we cannot build a fault-tolerant quantum computer as it is today. Those machines we do have, they are of the so-called NISQ type. They're very noisy. So we cannot really rely on the conclusions that they may make.
Well, I think there's more work that needs to be done. So research is ongoing, progress is being made, and this isn't, I think it was highlighted earlier, I think Lena, you mentioned, it's not just a case of scaling the number of qubits. There's more to it than that, and I think that is ongoing. So I think there's many organizations, a lot of investment into that, and we're seeing steady progress. So we've now run out of time. So thank you to everybody here on the panel, and thank you all for listening.